So we've seen a lot of brands making the news lately, and we're going to dive into why that is and the difference between a rebrand and a refresh, because that is actually the key here. So as we dive into this, I want you to be thinking about what brands you know that have maybe made some changes lately that you either liked or didn't like. And if you're considering rebranding your business, I want you to pay close attention to the examples that I bring up here, because a rebrand versus a refresh can really make a big difference in the way that your audience perceives the change and how well they accept it. Now, before we dive into that, let's first imagine something. So I want you to imagine that you've been going to a restaurant all your life. You know the sign, you know the exact way to get there. Hell, you even know their menu through and through. And one day, as you're heading there to go have a meal with your family, you notice that something has changed, and it would be the logo. And something about it just looks completely different. This is pretty much what happened at or with Cracker Barrel. So they decided that they needed to refresh their look. Maybe it was modernize it. They needed to bring it into the now. If you don't know about Cracker Barrel's previous logo, it was a very almost country feel, very home style. It created a certain kind of vibe. Now, on the mood board in the conference room, I'm sure that this idea sounded really, really great for the team at Cracker Barrel. But when it all came to be and that logo and rebrand was released, their audience was furious. And I imagine you all have heard about it. Longtime customers were saying that it was too cold, it felt too corporate, and most of all, that it didn't feel like it was their Cracker Barrel anymore. Now, in my opinion, all of this happened because Cracker Barrel was trying to appeal to a more wide audience. They were trying to almost water themselves down a bit to be able to incorporate more people who maybe weren't going for that home style vibe. But in doing so, they really alienated their most loyal customers. And that backlash was so loud that Cracker Barrel actually wound up scrapping the new logo and going back to the original one. I'm going to share another example of a company that did this as well that you can learn from. But first, let's wrap up this thing about Cracker Barrel, because the reality is the choices that they made in the silo, this corporate silo, really bruised a number of the relationships they had with their buyers. Now, you may not be a Cracker Barrel. You might not have thousands of people tweeting about your logo, right? But on a smaller scale, this exact same thing can happen. And it's not necessarily because a logo choice or a switch was bad. It was just that no one stopped to ask, do we need a rebrand or just a little refresh? And that is what we are going to be unpacking today, because I have been asked this a number of times, which do I need? But first, if you're new here, my name is Hunter Myers. I am the face and mind behind Verger Design Co. And I help bold founders build magnetic brands that sell with confidence, clarity, and connection. And here on this channel, we treat branding a little bit like dating, because the longer you spend in a relationship, the more you realize there are seasons that come with it. When you think about it, at first, when you're first starting to date someone, it's all about tweaking small things, right? You're figuring out what outfit to wear, what restaurant to go to, what activity to do with this new date, how to have fun. And when you think about this from like a branding yourself perspective, it could be the way you pose in your profile pictures, it could be the way that you write your bio, but you're making these little tweaks to make yourself as appealing as possible for the people you are trying to attract. That is a refresh. But then there also comes a moment where you start to realize, you know what, actually, maybe I don't want to be showing up as this person anymore. Maybe I don't want to keep having the same kind of relationships that I'm having, and I need to do more of an overhaul. This is where you're re-examining your values, what you care about, how you like to communicate, who you're trying to attract in general. That would be an example of a rebrand. You see the difference here? A refresh is really just some of those small minor tweaks, little changes here and there to make you more attractive to the people you're already trying to bring in. Whereas a rebrand is a lot more intense process. It is diving to the core of who you are, what you value, what you bring to the table as a person or a business, and how you want to present yourself to your new or growing audience. Now, let me give you some examples of some pretty well-known names and brands that have either done this well or haven't, because I want you to learn from the examples that you already have at your fingertips. So we're gonna dive into the first one, which is is intense. And they also, kind of similar to Cracker Barrel, got a lot of backlash. I'm going to see if you can guess what this company is or who this company and brand is. If you paid attention to the news, I'll say in the, I think 2010 is when you'll know how to pin this one down. So this is a clothing brand, and their logo is a blue box with little white letters in the middle of it. It was super recognizable, very easy to spot immediately, and was something that their customers were used to. Now, one day, the brand decided that, you know what, I think our logo is feeling a little too old. And so they decided, without telling anyone, to quietly make changes to this logo, presenting a far more minimal, modern look to their customers. And boy, was this a bad idea. People were furious. Overnight, customers were saying that this essentially looks like a knockoff online shop, not the brand that they know, like, and trust and have been going to for years. And similar to Cracker Barrel, the backlash was so intense from this switch that the company immediately went back and changed to the original logo again. Any guesses of the name of this brand? We are talking about Gap, who on October 6th of 2010 decided to change their logo without really letting their customers know, and then only 6 days later changed it back. So very short-lived logo experience here for Gap. Now later on, leadership at Gap actually brought up that they had misread how attached their customer base was to the original logo, and that they moved too fast without bringing their customers along for the ride. And I think this is a really important part that you need to be paying attention to here. If you are going to do a big change in your brand, I know the urge to want to keep it hidden and behind a curtain for this big launch and reveal. But the reality is your customers want to be brought along for the ride and the shift. They want to see the choices that you're making. They want to know the reasons behind it. They want to grow with you. So don't make the same mistake that Gap did and do a bunch of this stuff behind the curtain and behind closed doors. Bring your audience along if you're going to do a rebrand so that they can be a part of the process with you and can appreciate the changes that you're making instead of being shocked and put off by them. Now let's talk about a second brand. This one is a beverage brand that has been around for well over a century. It's got a red, white, and blue globe. Pretty much everyone in the world knows of this brand. Now, over the years, they kept tweaking their logo. They would make all kinds of changes. There was one time where it got so intense and so busy that consumers were joking that it felt like an over-designed project. But they did this all pretty publicly. But people were pretty attached to the feel of the brand. It had some nostalgia to it. It had a good bit of recognition. And again, it was so widely known that they had to be really smart about the changes they decided to make. So in 2023, they rolled out a new version, which was an updated version of their older original logo. The only difference was it was a little more punchy. The colors had a bit more contrast to them. The blues were a little darker. It was a bolder word mark. And it really looked more like a modern throwback to the original logo than something completely different, which, as I said, kind of gave that nostalgic feel. We were like, ooh, okay, I can see the shift that's happening here, but I still recognize who it is that I'm buying from. It's the company that I've always bought from before. Any guesses on what this company is? The brand is Pepsi. Now, in interviews, their team talked about the decisions that they made with this rebrand and that they wanted to connect more with their heritage while still bringing the brand into the now. And that's something that I think that Pepsi did a really, really good job at, was blending where they came from and where they were headed. And this is something I want you to think about as you're developing your brand. What are things that you can potentially pull through that existed in your current brand that you can incorporate into a rebrand that still makes it feel like you and that you haven't completely switched businesses on your customers? Now we're going to talk about a third brand, and this one did more of a full rebrand. Okay, they didn't do just a little refresh here. They went all in, and it was very strategic. So this company started in 2008 as kind of a scrappy little rent-a-couch startup. But by 2014, it grew so much, they needed a brand that was going to better represent the business that they had turned into, as opposed to still being the one that they started as. Anyone know this brand yet? Airbnb, and we're going to talk about their choices. You see, they did something really, really bold and actually created a new symbol altogether that was meant to represent the message that they were starting to push forward. So they shifted their messaging, they rewrote all of their sales pages, they changed their tagline as well to reposition themselves no longer as the cheaper alternative to hotels, but to actually give people the experience of living like a local anywhere that they traveled. Now, some people thought this was really, really weird at first, but Airbnb didn't care because they weren't necessarily trying to keep the customers that they started with. They were actually looking to expand their brand and appeal to people who didn't necessarily want the cheapest option, but wanted a full-on experience when they traveled. And what they did worked. This rebrand, so a full rebrand, not a refresh like the other companies, but this rebrand helped them go from a startup to a household name, bringing in billions and billions of dollars. And that is an example of a rebrand done right, because who they served and what they stood for no longer matched the business they were becoming, and that old identity that they had wasn't able to carry them there. So if you feel like your current brand is holding you back, so it's not that you need a little refresh or something like that, but that it is no longer positioning you the way that you want to be positioned for your audience or for that next level that you're taking your business, a more thorough rebrand may be the right choice for you. Looking at your brand as a whole, as opposed to just tweaking a couple little pieces here and there, but really looking at how are you positioning yourself? What does your messaging look like? Who are you trying to attract? How can we tell a story with your brand as a whole? Things like that. So when we look at Cracker Barrel, Gap, Pepsi, Airbnb, you may start to see a pattern. There's some brands that change too much or too fast or don't incorporate their audience in that switch, which causes people to revolt and abandon the brands. And then there's other brands who make thoughtful shifts that actually respect the people they're serving and the audience that they've already cultivated. And the refresh is really just there to express the brand in a wee bit of a more modern way, or something that's a little more confident and something that just feels a little fresher, but isn't completely abandoning the brand that was built before. And sometimes a business just outgrows the brand it built and requires a full shift and a full change in order to move forward as the business it is trying to become and to serve the people it was actually best intended to serve. And this brings us to the real question in this video, which is, what is the difference between a refresh and a rebrand? I'm going to break this down for you right here, super simple, so that you know which one you should be looking for when you're out to hire a designer. So if we pretend that your brand is a person for a second, a rebrand is like an entire identity shift. It's not like I just cut my hair, but it's like I changed my name, I changed my entire wardrobe, I changed the people I hang out with. Chances are many of us experienced a form of a personal rebrand, at least as we went through, my guess, middle school. The person that we were in elementary school probably changed a bit during middle school, and we entered high school as this new rebranded version of us. Maybe our name didn't change, but I imagine a lot of other things about us did and how we presented there to the world. You see, a rebrand is saying we're not who we were before. We have changed, we have evolved, we are different now. A brand refresh, on the other hand, is a bit like renovating your house. The bones are still there, the structure is still there, the base and foundation are still the same, but you're making some minor updates and changes to bring it into the current space. Maybe your taste has changed just a little bit, but overall, the house itself is still serving you the way that it did before, just with some little updates. So for a brand, this could look like modernizing logos, updating typography, switching a color palette a bit here and there, really just bringing the brand into the now because what you had felt a little outdated. Or maybe you started it with DIY and you're like, hey, I want to professionalize this. But maybe your audience stays the same, your offers are staying the same. And so really it's just a bit of a glow up, not a brand overhaul. You see, for most small businesses, the refresh is the sweet spot. You don't need to burn everything to the ground and start from scratch. You just need to bring where you started into a place where you are now. You need to dress your business as the professional, And again, professional doesn't necessarily mean buttoned up in corporate, but just as the very qualified individual you are now running the business and who you are becoming. Now, if you're sitting through this and you're like, oh my gosh, like, okay, let's go rebrand or let's do a refresh. I want you to pause for a second. I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions before we get too excited about getting into the nitty gritty. Answer these questions first, because if you do, this is going to save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of momentum. Question number 1, has who you served or what you do actually changed? If your ideal client or your offers or your structure of the business has completely changed from when you started, maybe you should consider doing a full rebrand, maybe even a name change in the process too. But if you're still serving the same people in pretty much the same way that you were previously, selling very similar offers, but you just want to update your look, go for more of a refresh. That is what will suit you and your business better. Question number 2, is your problem recognition or is it relevance? So do people know who you are, but maybe feel like you're a little outdated, maybe a little messy, could use a little cleanup? That is a relevance issue, and a refresh can help fix that. But if people are constantly misunderstanding what you do, who you serve, and what you offer, that is a recognition problem, which will take more strategy and more branding, so a rebrand, to help solve. So anything about it like this. If your best client is saying something to the effect of, I love your work, but I just wish your website showed how good you are, that's more of a sign of a refresh. But if they're saying, oh, I didn't know you did that, that could be a sign for a rebrand. You need more clarity there. You need to get clear on what you are doing, who you are attracting, and how you are presenting that. And then finally, question number 3, do you have the capacity to do this well? Now, this is the part that no one is out here glamorizing on Instagram, because a full rebrand takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources. You're doing a full strategy redo, possibly naming, new visuals, new messaging, new positioning, new website, a complete rollout. And that takes a lot and is likely going to wind up touching every part of your business. Whereas a refresh is more like a concentrated makeover. Maybe you're tightening your visuals, you're getting a little clearer on your copy, improving your consistency. With a refresh, you can usually make a pretty big impact without as much disruption as what comes with a full rebrand. So you need to honestly ask yourself, do you have the time, the resources, the budget, the team to pull apart your entire business foundation to rebuild it as this rebranded better version of yourself? Or do you need a focused refresh that is going to help your brand feel more like you without tearing the entire house down? Now, I want you to know that this isn't an all or nothing thing. There are a lot of businesses who will actually do a rebrand, but do it in phases. Maybe they start with their messaging or getting crystal clear on their positioning and their offers, and then move into visuals and then into website and things like that, and they break it down into pieces. This is absolutely an option. If when answering the questions, you were like, I really feel like I need a full rebrand, but I don't know that I can do all of that right now all at once, that's okay. Break it down into phases. Or maybe you really want to do a full rebrand down the line, but you just need a refresh right now as a stopgap to get you there. That is another option. See, you are allowed to be strategic with your timing. It is your business. It is your brand that you are building. A brand designer and strategist like myself is here to make sure that it is serving you as best as it possibly can. But you have to feel good in it, and you have to also be able to show up for the branding process, because it is collaborative. As a designer, we need your input. As a strategist, I need to hear your story and where you're coming from so that we can make sure that we're telling it in the right way for your audience. And so again, whether you're rebranding or just doing a refresh, it really is what you need right now. You don't have to reinvent yourself all the time. You just have to choose the right level of change for this correct phase in your business. Now, I'll make a number of other videos to tell you how to figure that out, but I don't want to overwhelm you right now as this one's already kind of long. So the key things to remember is that a rebrand is going to be a really big overhaul. You're going to be changing a lot of things about your business in a rebrand, whereas a refresh is really just a tune-up of your brand. It's bringing it into the 21st century, it's bringing it into the now, but still holding true to the values in the business that you have created during its lifetime. And if you aren't sure which one to pick, hop on a call with me. I will help walk you through which decision is best based on where you are headed and your story and journey of your business. It is okay to ask questions. It is okay to not know. I am here to answer anything that you need. I'll put my email in the description. You can shoot me an email. We can hop on a call to chat through it. Again, I am here to support you, whether it's a full rebrand or just a refresh. My main goal here is to make you successful in your business and make sure that you are showing up confidently. Because when you feel good in the brand that you have built, I can assure you, your marketing gets easier, you're going to show up more consistently, and you're going to be a hell of a lot more confident while you do it. Now, that is all for this video. If you liked it and want to see more, I post videos like this every week. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, share it with a friend. I will see you in the next one.